Spider-Man is often remembered as the lightest hero, the one who jokes, the one who smiles through danger. But that image hides something fundamental. Peter Parker was never given time to choose what kind of person he wanted to become. Before the mask, before the city, before responsibility became a sentence, people, quote, "There was just a boy," confronted with consequence. Most lives are shaped gradually. Responsibility arrives in fragments, small expectations, minor failures, forgiveness along the way. For Peter, it arrived whole, sudden, irreversible. Existentialist philosophers often argue that responsibility is inseparable from choice, that we are defined by what we decide to carry. Peter is the exception. His responsibility does not emerge from freedom. It emerges from shock. And when responsibility comes before choice, it does not feel like purpose. It feels like obligation. Something quiet breaks in that moment. Not loudly, not dramatically. It is the realization that mistakes are no longer private, that failure now has weight beyond the self. From that point on, Peter is never fully a child again, but he has also never allowed the stability of adulthood. He lives suspended between stages of life, old enough to carry guilt, too young to know how to set it down. This is where Spider-Man truly begins. Not as a hero rising, but as a person losing the luxury of hesitation. Responsibility, here, is not a virtue yet. It is a demand. And unlike chosen commitments, this one does not ask if he is ready. It simply stays. After that moment, Peter Parker does not simply feel guilt. He reorganizes his entire life around it. What begins as remorse slowly becomes orientation. Every decision is filtered through a silent question. What happens if I fail again? This is where responsibility stops functioning as a moral guide and starts shaping identity. Philosophers like Jean-Paul Sartre argued that humans are condemned to freedom, that we are responsible precisely because we choose. Peter's experience inverts that logic. He is condemned not by freedom, but by consequence. He did not choose responsibility. Responsibility chose him. And because it arrived through loss, it becomes inseparable from guilt. The city reinforces this constantly. Sirens do not signal danger. They accuse. Someone needs help. Someone always does. And Peter no longer believes he has the right not to respond. This is responsibility internalized too early. It does not create moral clarity. It creates vigilance. Peter learns to anticipate catastrophe before it happens, to carry outcomes that have not yet occurred. Psychologically, this is exhausting, but morally, it feels unavoidable because the alternative, resting, hesitating, choosing himself, feels indistinguishable from negligence. The jokes come from here. Humor is not lightness. It is pressure release. Behind the mask, Peter can act without being asked how much it costs. This is the paradox at the heart of Spider-Man. The more responsible he becomes, the less permission he feels to be human. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, responsibility stops being something he carries. It becomes who he is. Peter Parker lives in a permanent in-between, too responsible to be careless, too young to be settled. While others his age are allowed to experiment, to fail quietly, to be uncertain without lasting consequences, Peter exists under a different condition. His mistakes echo. Existential philosophy often speaks about life as something constructed through choice, through projects freely assumed over time. Peter's life resists that model. His future is not shaped by projects. It is shaped by interruption. At school, he is expected to be present. At home, dependable. In the city, vigilant. None of these roles fully know the others, and none of them offer rest. This fractures his sense of self. There is who he is when no one is watching, and who he must become when everyone depends on him. Growing up usually means gradually narrowing possibilities. Peter never gets that transition. Opportunities don't fade, they vanish. Relationships don't mature. They are postponed, sometimes indefinitely. This is why Spider-Man stories are filled with moments that almost happen. The date he nearly attends, the class he almost finishes, the life that remains close, but never accessible. Responsibility does not only take time from Peter, it takes certainty. He cannot commit fully to the present because the future might claim him at any moment. And so his youth stretches unnaturally, not lived, but deferred. He matures in function, but not in peace. This is the quiet violence of responsibility imposed too early. Not dramatic, not visible, just persistent. One of the quietest tragedies of Spider-Man is that most of his responsibility happens without witnesses. There are no celebrations for what never happens, no recognition for disasters quietly prevented. When things go right, nothing happens, and no one notices. This creates a specific kind of moral solitude. Peter learns early. That meaning will not come from recognition. It will come from endurance. Batman is watched, interpreted, turned into a symbol. Spider-Man, however, is often treated as inconvenience, a rumor moving between rooftops, someone blamed for broken streets and delayed trains, and still, he shows up. This is responsibility stripped of romance. Peter does not act because he expects gratitude. He acts because not acting feels morally intolerable. Here, responsibility begins to resemble what Michel Foucault described as internalized surveillance. No authority needs to watch Peter. He watches himself. Every pause feels suspicious. Every rest feels like neglect. The moral rule no longer comes from outside. It lives inside him, monitoring, correcting, accusing. This creates a loneliness deeper than invisibility. Not the loneliness of being unseen, but the loneliness of being fully understood by no one. No one asks how many versions of his life were quietly abandoned. No one asks who he might have been without the constant watchfulness. They see the mask. They never see the discipline beneath it. And so Spider-Man becomes something rare, a hero defined not by what he achieves, but by what he continuously absorbs: pressure, guilt, responsibility, without relief. There is a moment in Spider-Man's story that rarely receives attention. A moment when responsibility stops functioning as a moral strength and begins operating as control. There is no collapse, no dramatic failure, only accumulation. Peter does what is expected of him and still feels behind. He saves people and still loses time. He does the right thing and still disappoints those he loves. This is where responsibility reveals its shadow. When carried too early and too continuously, virtue stops guiding action and starts governing identity. Peter no longer asks, "What is the right thing to do?" He asks, "What would be unforgivable not to do?" That shift matters, because morality driven by fear slowly erodes freedom. Peter does not rest, because rest feels dangerous. He does not slow down, because slowing down feels negligent. Philosophically, this resembles what thinkers warned about when duty loses proportion. Responsibility, without limits, does not produce ethical clarity. It produces self-erasure. Peter was taught the rule, never the boundary. So he becomes skilled at sacrifice and clumsy at self-preservation. This is why Spider-Man stories feel heavy, even when they look light. Beneath the humor, beneath the movement, there is a young man who never learned how to forgive himself for being human. Virtue, at its healthiest, helps us live together. At its extreme, it quietly replaces life itself. And Peter stands on that edge, not because he wants to, but because stepping back feels morally impossible. What allows Spider-Man to endure is not the hope of resolution. There is no finish line waiting for Peter Parker. No moment where responsibility ends and life finally begins. He knows this, and still, he continues. This places Spider-Man close to a philosophical idea most people resist. Albert Camus argued that meaning does not come from resolution, but from commitment in the absence of it. Peter does not believe that sacrifice will one day be rewarded. He does not expect balance to be restored. He does not wait for things to even out. Responsibility, for him, is not transactional. It is existential. It is not about earning forgiveness. It is about preventing regret. And so Spider-Man becomes a figure of quiet persistence, not because he is certain, but because stopping would feel like betrayal of the self shaped by loss. There is maturity here, but not wisdom, only endurance. Peter grows older, but the weight does not lighten. He simply learns how to move without setting it down. This is why Spider-Man resonates so deeply, not because he wins, but because he continues without guarantees. In a world obsessed with outcomes, Spider-Man represents something rarer: commitment without closure. He lives inside the question, Camus, left unresolved. What does it mean to keep going? When meaning does not arrive afterward, Spider-Man never answers it. He embodies it. Spider-Man is often described as relatable because he struggles like everyone else. But that is only half true. What truly separates Peter Parker is not that he struggles. It is that he is never allowed to stop. Responsibility does not pause when he is tired. It does not soften when doubt sets in. It waits. And the world keeps asking. This is the cost rarely acknowledged in stories about virtue. We admire strength, but we seldom examine what constant strength requires. Spider-Man shows us that responsibility, when imposed too early, reshapes a life from the inside. It defines what you allow yourself to want, what you feel permitted to refuse, who you become. When no one is watching, Peter does not embody heroism because he is fearless. He embodies it because he continues despite fear, fatigue, and loss. And that should make us uneasy, because if responsibility can demand this much from someone so young, it forces a more uncomfortable question. How many people around us are carrying weights they never agreed to lift? How many learned too early that walking away was no longer an option? Spider-Man does not offer answers. He offers a mirror, a reflection of what happens when responsibility arrives before readiness and refuses to leave. And maybe that is why his story endures. Not because it promises hope, but because it tells the truth about the invisible cost of always doing the right thing.